Welcome. Welcome all to the 2025 Legislative Memorial Service. I will turn it over to the Chaplain of the Senate, Pastor Keith Johnson.
Please pray with me. Father, we thank you that you are, as Scripture says, the Father of mercies and the God of all consolation. That you comfort us in our sorrows so that we can comfort others in their sorrows with the consolation that we ourselves have received from God. And Father, we know this to be true, and we thank you that you will bring us peace. Yes, even the peace that passes all understanding. Father, today we thank you for the lives of these people who meant so much to their friends and to their families. We thank you so much for their service to our state as well. And God, we invite you to comfort us as we remember our loved ones today. Wrap your arms of love around all of us in this place today. Thank you, Father, and we pray this in your name. Amen.
Please stand with me as I invite Representative Carrie Seekins Crow to sing the national anthem.
Please join me as we sing the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Representative. So welcome. It truly is an honor to serve our great state in the legislative branch. There are just only a select few that get that responsibility and honor. And it is really my generation that stands on the shoulders of all of those that walked before us. This truly is a time to honor and cherish those legislators that have passed away over the last 2 years. These are certainly lives to be celebrated. We all only get one life to live, and there are those that are content to float by in life. As Solomon states in the book of Ecclesiastes, it's like chasing after the wind. And then there are those that are not afraid to take the lead, those that are sturdy enough to move to the front. Our loved ones were trailblazers in their own unique way. We have all probably used the phrase at one time, if these walls could talk, and well, today they do. Our deepest condolences to all of the spouses and families that have lost loved ones, but there's always hope. As stated in Romans 15, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope in the power of the Holy Spirit. Our state owes a great debt of gratitude to all of those that are here to honor today. Montana is eternally grateful. So with that, I will turn it over to the speakers to honor the memory and once again tell their story.
Thomas Aaron Selstead, Jr. Whereas it is with deep and sincere sorrow that the members of the 69th Legislative Assembly of the State of Montana record the passing of Thomas Selstad Jr. on June 16, 2024. It is fitting and proper that the record and accomplishments of the late Thomas Selstad Jr. be filed on the official records of this assembly, and the following facts relative to his career are hereby noted. Tom was born in Great Falls, Montana on March 8, 1927, to Thomas Selstad Sr. and Esther Selstad. Tom's parents immigrated to the United States from Norway and homesteaded in the Dutton area, where they met, married, and started their family. Tom Jr. was the second youngest of 6 siblings. Tom grew up on the family farm in the Dutton area. In the fall, the family would travel to California to work through the winters. Tom's father and older brothers worked in the shipyards, and Tom attended grade school. Eventually, the family quit traveling to California during the winters and took up residence in Great Falls, where Tom attended Great Falls High School, graduating in 1945. Upon graduation, Tom entered boot camp and, along with many of his classmates, prepared for the invasion of Japan. Fortunately, the war ended before the invasion was implemented. After the war, Tom attended and graduated from the University of Montana. He then attended the University of Washington for postgraduate work. While attending college in Missoula, Tom met and began dating Eleanor Smith. They married June 1, 1950. Upon finishing his postgraduate work in Washington, Tom took a job in Libby, teaching high school science and math classes and coaching football and basketball. He later took a job teaching and coaching in Fairfield, Montana, and led the Fairfield Eagles basketball team to their very first ever Class B state championship. In 1954, Tom started Selstad Soil Service, a business specializing in the new field of agricultural chemicals. In 1968, Tom started Selstad Sod Farm, the first sod farm in Montana. In 1984, he started Selstad's Lawn Ranger Spray Service, which provides residential and commercial lawn care. Tom also invested in real estate and had numerous rental properties throughout the years. Tom and Eleanor raised 3 sons, Scott, Spencer, and Sherman. Tom enjoyed following and supporting them in their endeavors growing up. He spent hours throwing balls, shooting baskets, and driving across the state to their many sports events. Tom was very active in Montana politics during the 60s and the 70s. He was elected and served terms in the Montana State Legislature, as well as elected and served 1 term in the Montana State Senate. In 1968, Tom was the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor. And in 1972, he was a primary candidate for the Republican candidate for governor. Tom passed away at the age of 97 at his home in Great Falls. Tom was preceded in death by his parents, his 5 siblings, his wife, Eleanor Selstad. He is survived by his 3 sons and their wives, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and special companion, Joyce Thomas.
Gordy Vance, 72, of Bozeman, Montana, passed away at home Friday, March 15, 2024. Gordy was born and raised in Great Falls, Montana, graduating from Great Falls High School. He moved to Bozeman in 1970 to attend Montana State and received his bachelor's degree in political science and remained in the Gallatin Valley the rest of his life. His career held in the private sector involved the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles. He was employed at Bozeman Ford in the early days, later opening his own dealership, selling vehicles, and lastly worked for businesses Team Bozeman and Power Play Motorsports, selling ATVs, motorcycles, and jet skis. 2008, Gordy started his public sector career proudly serving Belgrade and the surrounding area. He served in the Montana House of Representatives for 6 years, from 2009 to 2013, and in the Senate from 2015 to 2020. 21. And in the 2021 session, Gordy was elected by his caucus to serve as majority whip. And from 2009 to 2021, except for 2013, Gordy served as the chairman or vice chairman of the transportation committees. In 2023, he served as the Sergeant at Arms of the Montana State Senate. Gordy is survived by his wife Shelley, his son Ryan, and his wife Jennifer, his daughter Courtney, stepsons Shane, Chris, and grandchildren Sloan, Vance, Soren, Cody, and Amber Heiser. Those that know Gordy, which I had the privilege of knowing really well, I met him probably close to 20 years ago after I got to know his wife Shelley, who at the time was the clerk and recorder down in Gallatin County. This is a pretty short little essay of Gordy's life, but if you knew Gordy well, you knew he was a man of very few words. But his words were sincere and they carried weight. Probably one of the best compliments I can give to Gordy after serving with him for many, many years is that his yes was yes and his no was no. And if he told you he was going to do something and he was going to support something you were going to do, he was always there for you. You didn't have to call Gordy up 2 or 3 times and check, hey, are you going to vote for me for Speaker of the House or President of the Senate? You knew you had your vote if he said so. He was one of the more conservative individuals that I served with. He was fiscally conservative in his own life, and he was just as conservative, if not more so, with the taxpayers' money. He understood the proper role of government and was a true public servant in that capacity. I believe that friendship is a gift from God, and I'm proud to say Gordy was my friend, and I miss him.
Well, good afternoon. Great honor to be able to read the tribute for John Fleming. John was born on November 12, 1946 in Polson, Montana to Jim and Billy Fleming. He grew up on a farm in Pablo where he spent his childhood raking hay, changing irrigation pipe, and worrying that someone might forget to pick him up in the fields to make it to baseball practice. And I was fortunate to just actually live right down the road from where John grew up, near a bunch of the Flemings. He loved sports and excelled in many of them. He was known as a great athlete. He graduated from Ronan High School in 1965 and went on to Carroll College, where he earned his bachelor's in business in 1969. At the insistence of the Selective Service System, he served in the U.S. Army for 2 years after college, part of which was in Vietnam. Upon returning from Vietnam, John attended Law School for a year before deciding education was his field of choice. He went back to school to complete elementary and secondary education degrees and later a Master's of Education. He began teaching at St. Ignatius Schools in 1974. He briefly taught Title I in the high school before settling in to teach 5th grade and later half of his career, middle school social studies, where he was able to indulge in sharing one of his great interests, Montana history. He was often busy after the school day ended, teaching driver's education, coaching soccer, middle school football, Odyssey of the Mind, and Academic Bowl. After 40 years in the classroom and teaching generations of Mission Bulldogs, he retired in 2014. Running into former students and having a quick chat always brought a smile to John's face. Public service and fairness were important to John, and he served on the Lake County Planning Board, the St. Ignatius Rural Fire Department Board, and the Montana Education Association, Montana Federation of Teachers Board for many, many years. In 2019, he was inducted into the Montana Federation of Public Employees Hall of Fame for his lifetime of work in support of labor unions. He was proud to be elected by his neighbors to serve 2 terms in 2009 to 2010 and in 2017 to 2018 as a representative in the Montana legislature. And I can tell you, people love John for who John was. They didn't care whether he was a Democrat or Republican because he was a people's person. John and his wife of 49 years, Lydia, raised 3 boys in the shadows of the Mission Mountains near St. Ignatius. His relaxation came in the form of raising cattle on their small ranch, a marginally remunerative side hustle that he enjoyed immensely. John was preceded in death by his parents and brother Jim. He is survived by his wife Lydia and sons, Louis of Missoula, Will and Brandy of Great Falls, and Ian Brenda of Los Alamos, New Mexico. His grandchildren, Daphne, Donna, Eli Bennett, and Cooper, and siblings Mary, Joan, Pat, Neil, Greg, Peggy, Annie, Katie, and Elizabeth. So a great big family. Thank you.
Whereas, it is with deep and sincere sorrow that the members of the 69th Legislative Assembly of the State of Montana record the passing of Arlene Reichert on May 3rd, 2024. It is fitting and proper that the record and accomplishments of the late Arlene Reichert be filed in the official records of this Assembly, and the following facts relative to her career are hereby noted. Born to Anne and Charles Cohn on January 14, 1926, Arlene Estelle Cohn was raised in Buffalo, New York, where in 1942 she met Harold Rick Reichert at a Christmas Day USO dance party. Rick was in the Army Air Corps stationed at Niagara Falls prior to his tour of duty in England during World War II. Here at the end of the war, or near the end of the war, Rick was assigned to the base in Great Falls, and Arlene cut her nurse's training to follow the love of her life to Big Sky Country. Arlene and Rick were married in Great Falls on September 4th, 1945. Arlene spent much of the next 2 decades raising her 5 children while being active in the PTA, League of Women Voters, Hadassah, Great Falls Public Library, and as one of the founders of the local public radio. After his military service, Rick was a mechanic, Great Falls firefighter, and talented carpenter who built the family home where Arlene lived for more than 76 years. Rick died of cancer in 1968. Arlene, who was only 42 at the time, still had several of her 5 children at home. To support her family, she went to work as a secretary at the McLaughlin Research Institute, MRI, gradually taking on many responsibilities, including technical editor of a scientific journal, lab supervisor, the public relations spokesperson, and by the time she retired in 1988, she was MRI's assistant director. Arlene always had a passion for improving local and state government, and in 1972, she was one of 100 elected delegates to rewrite Montana's Constitution. She maintained great pride in that document throughout her long life. Arlene was also a legislative reporter for the local television stations. She served in the Montana legislature as a representative for 1 term from 1978 to 1981. There, among other things, she helped spearhead the statewide initiative for Montana to adopt a one-house unicameral legislature. Arlene was the recipient of numerous prestigious state and national awards in her service. Whether in her personal life, during her career at MRI, or during her time as a community activist and historic preservationist, Arlene brought a bright smile, tremendous energy, leadership, inspiration, creativity, compassion, and an optimistic attitude. She was a hero to me and a huge example. In 1994, Arlene mobilized a community of supporters to save the historic 10th Street Bridge that crosses the Missouri River in Great Falls. She saved it from imminent demolition. An amazing feat. She led efforts to raise millions of dollars for the bridge's restoration for pedestrians. It was a true labor of love that required 30 years of daily effort. It was her passion, and it exists as a memorial to her today. The Great Falls City Commission voted unanimously in 2022 to rename the bridge the Arlene Reichert Community Heritage Bridge, so fittingly. Arlene crossed life's last bridge peacefully at the age of 98 at Peace Hospice in Great Falls, surrounded by the love of her family. Arlene is survived by her children, Cheryl, Charles Bocock Reichert, Greg Reichert, Robert Beth Reichert, Claire Tom Bays, 8 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. Arlene was preceded in death by her parents, brother Gary, Debbie Cohn, and son Roger, Valerie Reichert. She was amazing.
You probably saw I got up like an old guy. Is the Howlett family, the Lindsay family here? Okay, I didn't see you coming in. Okay, good to see you. Well, Janice Howlett, and I knew her as Jan Johnson, was born August 6, 1944 to George and Verdi McCallum in the old hospital in Kalispell, Montana, where I myself was born. She was the oldest of George and Verdi's 4 beautiful daughters, Anita, Glenda, and Deborah, and I assume they're here today too, I hope so. Jan grew up on the family ranch surrounded by sheep and cows and pigs and chickens in the Nirad Lone Pine area. And if you're familiar with that part of rural western Montana, it's not too far from Hot Springs. It's kind of between Hot Springs and Hog Heaven, if you know where that is. Being the eldest, Jan loved bossing her sisters around and helping her parents run the farm ranch. She graduated from Hot Springs High School in 1962. Years later, she reunited with her husband, Kenny Howlett, in a high school reunion there at Hot Springs, and Kenny sadly passed away in July 2017. Janice was a brilliant, beautiful woman who never let fear stand in her way. Her childhood was spent in Hot Springs, Lone Pine, and Nevada, and then she went on to college in Dillon, Missoula, and Arizona, and she held a bachelor's degree in education from the University of Montana and a master's in special education from the University of Phoenix. She became a teacher who is still treasured by her many students. She changed fields from education to hiring doctors for hospitals across the country, which I didn't know. She was a realtor, as was her father, former Montana Senator George McCallum. And like her father, Jan was a state senator. She served in the Montana Senate for one legislative session in 1981, and I was there, of course, with both of them, and served with both of them at that same time. And we thought, and I don't know what research we did to corroborate this, but we thought they were the only father-daughter combination in the states, in any state senate in the country. So I believe that, I guess, because I want to, but it's probably true. She was quoted as saying, "A woman's place is in the House and in the Senate." And she taught her children the importance of making an impact on others' lives through volunteerism, civic duty, and in later years, Jan served on the Polson City Council. And she was one vibrant, outgoing, lovable person. Janice was very charming and charismatic. She never met a stranger. Janice passed away in Kalispell at the age of 80. She is dearly missed by her daughter, Leah, Lindsay, her son, Joe Johnson, as well as her grandchildren, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and you're going to have to bear with me on this. Tia and Kanika Johnson, Nicholas Lindsay and his son Isaac, Kayla and Logan Chamberlain and their daughters, Vanaya, Sage, and Olivia, Dylan and Emily Lindsay and their daughter Nora, and Jackson Fulis. Janice is also survived by her 3 sisters, Anita, Mrs. Jim Opadahl, Glenda, Mrs. Chris Hewland, and Deborah Swingley. She loved her family, including her extended family, more than anything. And as I've mentioned, I really can't emphasize this enough, she was a very radiant person, a magical person. And everybody liked her. She was talented, she was lovely. She will be greatly missed by the many who knew her. And she was my good friend. Thank you.
William S. Bill Chrismore, age 91, a longtime Libby resident, passed away at his home November 16, 2024, surrounded by his loving family. Bill was born May 9, 1933 in Camas, Montana, to William H. and Sarah Chrismore. He was the second of 4 children, older sister Pat and younger brothers Bob and Phil. Bill grew up in the Hot Springs area, attending school at Lone Pine and Hot Springs, graduating from Hot Springs High School 1952. In 1954, Bill married Linda L. Graham. They moved to Lincoln County, lived up Wolf Creek, where Bill did some horse logging. In 1955, Bill went to work for the Montana Highway Department. Bill and Linda had 4 children, Bill Jr., Sherry, Stuart, and Kim. Bill and Linda divorced in 1966, and in 1970, Bill married Carol Joy Thompson and embarked on their 54-year love story. Carol's sons, Don and Bob, brought the kid total to 6 for the newlyweds. Later, Bill, Sherry, Stuart, and Kim's little brother Joe would join the pack. Shortly after their marriage, Bill left the highway department and they started their logging business. Chrismore Logging became a labor of love for both Carol and Bill. And I might add that when I came to work in Libby in 1972 with the Western News, the St. Regis public PR person invited me to take a drive. We went out and looked at some logging jobs, and on Sunday afternoon, Bill Chrismore and his son Junior were out there tipping over trees, and Junior was pretty young, but he was out there setting chokers and getting ready for Monday morning. The old boy that I was traveling with said, "Now there's an up-and-coming logger. He's just getting started, but you watch, he's going to be a big success," and he was. Bill was a passionate outdoorsman when he wasn't working, and he was most likely either fishing or hunting. He and Carol shared many an adventure fishing and hunting trip. He also instilled the passion in his children and grandchildren. He regularly competed in Logger Day competitions from the start, was expert with both crosscut saw and axe. He won many sawing and chopping events throughout the years, won all-around logger numerous times. He taught also many young boys and girls how to saw with a crosscut. Bill Chrismore loved the Libby community, was involved in many clubs and organizations. He was a Mason, a Lion, member of the Libby Volunteer Ambulance, Libby Chamber of Commerce, and more. In 1995, I chaired his campaign for Montana State Senate. He was elected and served the people of Lincoln County until 2002. Bill also served as president of the Montana Logging Association, was recognized as Montana Logger of the Year in 1983. Bill leaves a legacy of hard work, integrity, compassion, and community service. He was preceded in death by his father, mother, brother Bob, and granddaughter Carly. He is survived by his wife Carol, Carol Joy, son Bill Jr., his wife Barb, daughter Sherry, son Stuart Rhea, daughter Kim, Glenn Jackson, son Don, Jenny Thompson, son Bob, Tina Thompson, and son Joe, wife Tamara. Sister Pat Shields, brother Phil, 16 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren, many nieces and nephews, and many who still consider him friend. On a personal note, I first came to know Bill well through Libby Lions Club and Libby Volunteer Ambulance. And also, I spent some time working for Congressman Dick Shoup and some time campaigning for him, and Bill was right by my side. In fact, he arranged a logging truck Chris Moore rode up on top of a big load of ponderosa pine with my judge, who's now the judge, or my son, Matt, who is now the judge in Lincoln County. And they rode up on top with Joanne, and he was a good friend. The one little humorous story that at least I find humorous, when I was beginning to to chair his campaign, he was running against a popular former county commissioner. And I said, well, for crying out loud, Jim is 61 years old. Do you realize he's going to be almost 70 by the time he'd finish the term? Bill said, well, Mike, how old do you think I am? I said, well, I don't know. How old are you? He said, I'm 61. What Bill found funny, more humorous, was that when I ran for House of Representatives in 2010, I was 63 years old. 64 by the time I'm serving, and I'm 78 today. And he thinks that's pretty funny. Thank you, folks. Bill Chris Moore was a great man.
Robert John Pavlovich passed away on September 7, 2024. Bobby was born on June 5, 1929 in Butte to John and Stella Pavlovich. Bob made the most of every day of his 95 years, and he had a profound influence as a tavern owner, in his 20-plus years as a legislator, and as a fierce advocate for veterans' causes. Bob possessed an impeccable work ethic that he learned as a young man. He realized that if you wanted something done, you had to work hard to earn it. Bob delivered groceries, was a paperboy, and picked up every odd job he could find. Bob subsequently enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he spent 3 years. In the early 1960s, Bob's bartending career started, and after various jobs in San Francisco, he returned to Butte and joined his brother, Pete, who owned the Met Tavern. In 1979, a group of Met customers talked Bob into running for the Montana State Legislature. He campaigned hard and eventually won the seat, and thus another chapter in Bob's remarkable life began. After learning the ropes in Helena, Bob got right to business. He learned a valuable lesson early on, and that was the ability to reach across and work with both sides of the aisle. With this, he learned to compromise to craft legislation that would benefit all Montanans. Over time, Bob earned a reputation as a hardworking, fair-minded, and knowledgeable lawmaker. In the legislature, Bob worked with the Butte delegation to get poker and keno machines approved, worked hard with representatives of Southwest Montana to ward off the proposed threats to the operational integrity of Montana Tech and Western Montana College. Bob also fought for 6 years in the legislature to get a veterans hiring preference enacted. In 1984, Bob was awarded the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States Special Award for Distinguished Service. Bob was also acknowledged by many other agencies during his tenure in the legislature. When his 20-plus years in the legislature concluded, Bob returned to Butte to enjoy retired life, as he would call it. He found a couple part-time jobs, but eventually retired from those. Bob then refocused his tenacity, energies, and resources into getting a veterans home sited in Southwest Montana. Bob was tireless and fierce in his advocacy of this project. Bob subsequently entered the home he helped get built and spent his final days there. Bob is survived by his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even great-great-grandchildren. Bob was preceded in death by his beloved wife, Kathy, son Bobby, and daughter Kathy. And I, as a child, was fortunate to get to watch Bobby work with the Butte delegation as him and my father served for many years together. And I owe him for that to eventually get me to serve after watching the Butte delegation. So thank you, and it was good to have his family here today.
Robert Allen Bob Gilbert Sr. Robert Allen Gilbert Sr. was born on May 9th, 1939 in Roundup, Montana, to Robert Virgil Gilbert and Edith May Horning Gilbert. As a young man, he joined the Army Reserves, then soon after started his career in the oil industry. He married Lillian Dolores D. Hazelton Gilbert on October 11th, 1956, and spent 66 years happily married. They had 3 children together. They built their lives and raised their family in Roundup, Gillette, Wyoming, Williston, North Dakota, Glendive, and finally settled in Sydney. For 17 years, Bob worked for Getter Trucking as a truck driver, moving drilling rigs, and later as a truck pusher. He loved moving drilling rigs. He could talk for hours about the ins and outs of driving truck and the rigs. Starting in 1985, he served as a state representative to the Montana legislature, serving Montanans and making an impact across the state until 1994. For 28 years, Bob served as a lobbyist for several different organizations, including Montana Walleyes Unlimited and school bus contractors. Many people remember him sitting on the Bob Gilbert bench in the Senate hallway, just right out here, the Bob Gilbert office, offering a smile and a friendly chat. Bob Gilbert and walleyes will always belong in one sentence for many in the capital. He enjoyed hunting in the Castle Mountains and the Little Belt Mountains, sailing his 27-foot sailboat on Canyon Ferry Lake in Fort Peck, and spending time at their cabin at Fort Peck. He loved people. He loved sharing his experiences and learning from others. He loved hearing about state issues and finding solutions, and he loved sharing stories about his grandkids. He was genuinely proud of his family and those that he made a connection with. And Bob was successful in business, but more importantly to him, he was successful in the relationships that he had. Bob passed away after enjoying one last session in Helena, doing what he loved, visiting with people and building relationships while serving the citizens of Montana. Bob is survived by his loving wife, Dee, son Robert Gilbert Jr. and Deborah, grandson Rob Gilbert III and Jessica, daughter Suzanne George, grandsons Bobby, Nick, and Chad, daughter-in-law Brenda Gilbert, grandson Cody, grandson Keith Miller, granddaughter Stacy Miller, numerous cousins, 16 great-grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, his 4 sisters, and his brother Joe. Bob was preceded in death by his mother Edith Groom, father Robert V. Gilbert, son Keith Gilbert, sisters Shirley and Kathy, and brothers Mike and Jerry. I had the opportunity to know Bob for almost 40 years. The oil patch is a pretty small, close-knit fraternity, and I got to meet Bob back in the mid-'80s when he had his trucking business, Paraffin Services, in Sydney, and I was working for Halliburton out of Glendive. And the nice thing about Bob, you were only a stranger once. I never saw Bob without a smile. Even when things were going drastically wrong, he always had a smile on his face. But, you know, it's kind of like that old saying about the duck. Stay calm and cool on the surface and paddle like crazy underneath. But he will be truly missed, And Dee, it's good to see you here. Thank you.
Craig S. Witt was born August 1st, 1960, to Pete and Betty Witt in Chandron, Nebraska. He was the youngest of 4 brothers and 1 sister. He spent his formative years ranching with his dad and brothers on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. He often said it was 40 miles from the nearest can of pop. These years taught him many things that he would carry with him throughout his life. On December 30th, 1983, he married his love and his best friend, Susan, in Chandron. They spent 40 wonderful years together. They had known each other since the 6th grade. They graduated from high school in 1978. He was a Nebraska state wrestling champion their senior year. He graduated from Chandron State College in 1983. After their wedding, they moved to Oklahoma City, Kansas City, and Denver. In Denver, they were blessed with 2 children, Andy and Allie. In 1995, they moved to Kalispell to open the Perkins Restaurant and Bakery in Evergreen, which they owned and ran until 2020. They were blessed with their 3rd child, Augustus. Craig was an avid volunteer in his community. He helped coach Little Guy Wrestling and Little Guy Football. He was a past president of the Evergreen Rotary Club and was a founding member of the Evergreen Chamber of Commerce. He was an active member of the Friends of the NRA Banquet Committee. He served Montana as a state representative in 2007 legislature as a Republican. He always said, "Life is short, do something," and he lived by those words. Craig always had a good joke and loved to laugh and enjoy life. He so enjoyed his Perkins customers and employees. Near the end of his life, he was a bartender at the Kalispell Eagles Club and loved interacting with his customers, and they with him. He was a proud husband, father, grandfather, friend, and patriot. Craig was preceded in death by his parents, Pete and Betty, his brother, Rob. He's survived by his wife, Susan, children, Andrew, Kate, Witt Musilowski, Alexis Jim Sattler, Augustus Witt, and 4 grandchildren, Paisley, Blair, Margot, and Riot, brothers Rick, Ron, Randy Witt, sister Kathy, kindred, and numerous nieces and nephews, cousins-in-laws, and so many friends. He will forever be in his family's hearts and will be missed beyond measure.
Albert Reed Marbot. Reed was born in Denver, Colorado on November 15, 1934. Together with his mother, brother Gary, and sister Barbara, he moved to Montana in 1951 to their newly acquired ranch in the Lolo Creek Valley. Reed attended the Woodman School for a couple of years when it was a 1-room, 1-teacher, 8 grades outhouse, out-back school. Reed, he never went by Albert, attended Missoula County High School and received a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from Colorado State University. Reed married Kathleen, and they had 2 daughters and 1 son together. The family acquired the Grant Creek Ranch, located in the Grant Creek Valley, just north of Missoula, in 1955. And they operated it for 24 years, raising registered Aberdeen Angus cattle. The breeding line of Angus raised on the Grant Creek Ranch won numerous ribbons at livestock shows and were prized by stock growers throughout the Northwest. Reed was a veterinarian and an agricultural consultant, a school trustee of Missoula County, and received a National Wildlife Federation Conservation Award in 1982. He was appointed to the Senate in 1983 and served one term there. This experience was the impetus for his second career. So after politics, Reed attended the Northwestern School of Law at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, where he received a law degree, and then he went on to become an expert in water law, serving as a water rights negotiator for the state of Oregon and developing an extensive water law practice. He handled some of the largest and most complex water right cases in the nation's history, particularly relating to the Columbia River and the Columbia Basin water users, tribes, and communities. Reed was also a law professor. Reed is survived by his wife, Kathy, his sister, Barbara, nephew, Gary S. Marbett, daughter, Cindy, and granddaughter, Sabrina. He is predeceased by his daughter, Erin, son, Eric, and his brother, Gary Marbett. Thank you.
Everett Merrill Snortland, 86, passed away peacefully in Conrad on May 1st, 2023. Everett was born February 23, 1937, in Conrad to parents Fanny Garner of Brady and Walter Snortland of Conrad. Everett graduated from Conrad High School and attended Montana State College, where he received his BS in Agronomy and Soils in 1959. It was during college he met and married Georgia Lou Soule of Great Falls. Their oldest child, Julie, was born in 1960. The new family moved to Norfolk, Virginia, where Everett served as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Everett was honorably discharged from the Army in 1962 to return to Montana. The young family moved to Conrad, and Everett started farming the family's farm. Everett farmed until retiring in 2000. With his knowledge, love of agriculture, and leadership skills, he became the Agricultural Stabilization and Conservation Service Director for state of Montana under President Reagan. And he served there from 1981 to 1989. In 1989, he was appointed Director of the Department of Agriculture for the state of Montana under Governor Stan Stevens for one term. He also belonged to the Montana Farm Bureau Federation and Pend Oreille County Farm Bureau. Everett was part of a group of younger Montanans who were the political nephews of Uncle Frank from Cutbank, the legendary Frank Whetstone. I met Everett when I was in high school and part of the Teenage Republicans. He was part of that older group of up to 40 young Republicans. He had a huge passion for politics. That group started working for Ronald Reagan in 1968. Everett worked to gather delegates for Ronald Reagan in 68 and in 76 and in 80 when he was a delegate himself to be there when Ronald Reagan was nominated to be president. In 1984, he worked again for more delegates for Ronald Reagan. The group, because Montana had no Republican senators at the time, the group was asked by the White House after Reagan was elected to help with judicial appointments and statewide appointments to support the White House. there were various positions like the U.S. Marshal and the U.S. Attorney. He also served in the Montana House of Representatives during the 1971 session, and he lobbied for the Montana Farm Bureau in 1972 and 73. Was instrumental in Young Republicans, as well as being heavily involved in the Pend Oreille County Republican Central Committee. Everett was one to not compromise with his principles, but yet he was friendly and positive with everyone. He will be remembered for his infectious personality, his love of his family and friends, and his generosity. Everett leaves behind his wife of 64 years, Georgia Snortland, his 3 children and their spouses, Julie and Mitch Sampson, Greg and Ann Snortland, Becky and Rob Donahoe, who are all here today, as well as many of the grandchildren. He also has many nieces and nephews and numerous friends, preceded in death by his sister, parents, and 2 grandsons. In the end, Everett loved his family, was loyal to his friends, and he never lost that wonderful Snortland smile.
It is my honor and privilege to celebrate former Governor and State Representative Ted Schwinden, whom I've known my entire life. My parents were close friends with Ted and his children, and I grew up with several of his grandchildren. Any mention of Ted immediately brings to mind Easter at the Governor's Mansion, generously hosted by Ted and his wife Jean, hunting for eggs in the lawn and running around the mansion with abandon. Ted Schwinden was born on his family's farm on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation between Wolf Point and Poplar on August 31st, 1925. After rising to valedictorian of his graduating class, he enlisted in the United States Army and served in both the European and Pacific theaters in World War II. After returning home in 1946, he resumed his education, earning a bachelor's and master's from the University of Montana, and studying economics at the University of Minnesota. Ted married Jean Christensen in 1946, and they had 2 sons, Mike and Dory, and 1 daughter, Chris. Ted entered the world of politics in 1958, winning a seat in the Montana House of Representatives, where he served 2 terms. In 1965, he was elected president of the Grain Growers Association, and from 1969 to 1976, he served as the Commissioner of State Lands. He gave up the position in 1977 to run for lieutenant governor and was elected as Montana's 19th governor in 1980. He served the state in the capacity for 2 terms, earning a reputation as an honest man who could work with people from both parties. He and his wife, Jean, opened the governor's mansion to the public for the first time and often welcomed the public tours in person. As governor, his personal number remained in the phone book, and he answered his own telephone. Radio talk shows throughout the nation would call him at home for impromptu interviews. When Ted was on the phone, it was impossible to tell if he was talking to the governor of Oregon or a custodian at the Capitol. Every caller warranted his respect and full attention, his children recalled of him. He made a point of responding to every letter he received. After leaving office, he taught at Carroll College and the University of Montana, then volunteered at a hospice after retiring to Arizona. Ted lived his final years with his daughter, Chris, in Phoenix, where he died on October 7th, 2023, at the age of 98. Ted was preceded in death by his dear wife, Jean, who I know Ted would insist that we acknowledge and credit for his success. He is survived by 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. In news coverage after his death, Ted was described as a brilliant intellect with an unassuming persona, a shrewd poker player who always remembered what cards were on the table and usually left with winnings in hand, and a politician with an uncanny and earnest ability to connect with people. Back in 2019, I made a trip to Phoenix to visit Ted. At the time, I was serving as a school board trustee, as he once did, with a dream of one day serving in the Montana legislature. As you can imagine, I had a lot of questions. He was so patient, so kind, and so wise. He told me how important it was to listen to folks with an open mind, remember their names, and respond to every phone call and letter you receive. He maintained that running for and serving in public office was more about inspiring other people to work alongside you than it was about your individual abilities. And that while you needed the support of your party, getting things done always required working across the aisle. Ted was known for straight talk, and he didn't hesitate to correct me on a few misguided opinions I shared with him that day. What Ted taught me, and I think many others, is that earning trust matters far more than trying to please everyone. As Ted used to say about Montana, I'll join others in saying about him, he was the last of what is best. Thank you, Ted, for continuing to inspire us all.
At this time, we will take a short 10-minute intermission, and when you hear the playing of Amazing Grace by Ian and Daphne Fleming, that is son and granddaughter of John Fleming, that will be your cue to come back and find your seat. Thank you, Ian and Daphne Fleming. So with that, I will invite Representative Darling to come and continue with the eulogies.
George Tiak Bennett. Lifelong Helena resident George Bennett, 94, passed away peacefully in the morning of May 6, 2023 at his home in Helena. George was born in Helena on February 1st, 1929 to Catherine Murray Bennett and Harry P. Bennett. He married Mary Catherine Fabich in September of 1965 and raised two sons, Harry and John Bennett. George was baptized and confirmed in the St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Helena. He served as an acolyte, altar boy, and choir member. George maintained his spirituality throughout his long life. He graduated from Hawthorne Elementary, Helena High, and the University of Michigan with BBA, MBA, and Juris Doctorate in law degrees. He also spent a year at NYU pursuing his master's in taxation. George practiced law in Helena for 50 years, receiving his PIN from the State Bar in 2007. He, with many of his classmates, enlisted in the Naval Reserves as seniors in high school. After completing his undergraduate work in Michigan, he was called into active service during the Korean War and was Chief Petty Officer on Midway Island. George was elected the Lewis and Clark County Chairman of the Republican Party and served as a Montana representative in 1971 and 72. He was then elected to the Montana Senate from a 3-county district, and campaigning in those counties involved meeting and talking to a diverse number of great Montanans. He was a senator in the 1973 legislative session, which considered the issues raised by Roe versus Wade, the Equal Rights Amendment, and implementing the changes in law under the newly formed Montana Constitution. Mary Kay told me that those were treasured years in George's life. George was also president of the Helena YMCA Board, president of the Helena Navy League, 1st District Bar Association, and the Helena Kiwanis Club. He also served on the Montana Supreme Court Bar of Examiners, drafting bar exam questions. George is survived by his wife of 58 years, Mary Kay, sons and their spouses, Harry, Bethany Bennett, John and Shawnee Bennett, and grandchildren, Nicholas, Corrine, and Ava. He was preceded in death by his mother, father, and younger sister, Alice Bennett Petrie. I met George and Mary Kay when I moved to Helena in 2009. George was a member of the local coffee group called the Flickers, who met nearly every day for over 25 years in downtown Helena. Thank you.
I am deeply honored and humbled to speak of our dear friend, colleague, mentor from Missoula, Professor, Senator, Dr. Ron Erickson. First, I extend to Ron's daughters, Terrell, who I was lucky to go to high school with, and her husband, Christopher, and Christine Erickson and her daughter, his granddaughter, Avery Erickson, our continuing sympathies. We share your grief. Still actively engaged, Ronald Eugene Erickson passed away on October 8, 2023, at the age of 90, joining his lovely beloved wife, Nancy, who died in February of 2022. It is impossible to list Ron's many accomplishments as a professor and as a legislator. Ron earned his PhD in organic chemistry in 1958, did a NATO fellowship to study the ozone layer in 1961, and by 1965, he began teaching at the University of Montana, where he helped create the Environmental Studies program. And he taught courses, many great ones, but including many's favorite was a class called Ethics, Beauty, and the Environment. Missoula became home to him and his family, and his work to benefit the state of Montana and its people, including my community, continued until his death. Ron embraced community activism at many different levels throughout his life, always keeping in mind the public good. Ron served the people of the state in the Montana House of Representatives from 1999 to 2008, and then went on to the Senate until 2013. He won many awards, including Conservationist of the Year. Ron was a great legislator. He never asked for recognition for what he did, but always focused on getting things done and getting things done right. He is remembered by one senator as being able to, on the floor, understandably explain the physics of mercury in 45 seconds. As a journalist, the late Chuck Johnson wrote, Ron brought a wealth of knowledge through his ability to analyze tough tax issues and natural resource issues. While protecting the environment was front and center for Ron, he was also involved in protecting our rights on all fronts. He organized the faculty against the Vietnam War and all of its consequences. A vigorous supporter of unions, he supported his teachers' union, the University Teachers Union, for many years, including being a chief negotiator. He was also active in Friends of the Patty Canyon, where he created a sanctuary for his family and for many of us, a place to really get together and enjoy each other's company. He helped save the wetlands in his community when it was being developed. He encouraged a new development to leave a part of the wetlands permanently, a sanctuary in the middle of town for birds to land. He also served on Missoula City County Planning Board. I am blessed to have grown up in a town influenced by Ron's wisdom, vision, generosity, and dogged determinism, which provided many, including me, a model for what selfless community service is all about. In addition to all that, Ron was a poet in words and in action. Thank you, dear Ron Erickson, for your many loving and lasting contributions to the state of Montana, which he loved as we all do.
I don't really need these, but they make me look distinguished, so I'm going to put them on. So, I have the honor and privilege. Senator Darrell Taves. Darrell Wayne Taves was born to Harold and Lillian Taves on May 24th, 1949 in Glasgow, Montana. He passed away at the age of 74 on September 30th, 2023. Darrell grew up with his parents and three siblings on their family farm in Leicester. His passions in life were Jesus, serving as Christ did, and education. He accepted Jesus as his personal Savior at an early age, and he was a member of the Leicester Mennonite Brethren Church his entire life. He graduated from Leicester Christian High School and then attended Tabor College in Montana State. He married his wife, Jean Schmidt, on November 27, 1969. Earlier in their marriage, they served with Campus Crusade for Christ. This was a life-changing time in learning about the Spirit-filled life and working with youth. Darrell's desire was for everyone to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. They returned to Leicester, where he served his community in many ways, including Leicester Christian High School Board, the dorm parents, Leicester Grade School Board, Leicester Mennonite Church Board Council, Sunday School teacher, and Central District Mennonite Brotherhood Conference Boards. Serving in these positions was his lifelong ministry and passion, as well as raising his three daughters, Laura, Lisa, and Luann. He was a realtor for 40 years, along with working in farming and personally with the Zerbe Brothers Farms. God called him into public service in 1993 as a Montana State Senator, and he served for 8 years. He was proud of sponsoring Senate Bill 220 and Senate Bill 302, that's the dry prairie water for up in our country there, for his area that was still under construction. Later, Darrell served on the Valley County Nursing Home Board and as a coordinator for the international students at Lester Christian High School for 17 years. Darrell is survived by his wife Jean, their 3 daughters and husbands, 8 grandchildren, and Darrell's brothers Les and Norm Taves and sister Donna King. He was preceded in death by his parents Harold and Lillian. Darrell had an interesting smile. And anybody that knew Darrell knew that that smile had a little mischievous, but he really cared about a lot of people. The life that he professed, he lived. That's the best thing I think I could say about him. I think if Darrell was here, the things that he'd like to say is 3 things. And these things that we talked about, we prayed about, we tried to live. There is forgiveness, there is hope, and there is an eternity. And I think regardless of what we say or what somebody could be said about Senator Darrell Taves, I think, honestly, the best thing that he would hear is, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And I think that really sums up the life of Senator Darrell Taves. Thank you.
Douglas Paul Flement, 70, of Lewistown, passed away September 23rd, 2024. Doug was born in St. Cloud, Minnesota on August 5th, 1954. He felt his life truly began when he moved to Montana to attend Cara College in Helena. He liked everything about Montana and made his permanent home here. Doug was united in marriage on June 26, 1982, to Jill Edens of Helena, Montana. Together, they raised their children, Paul and Caitlin, in Lewistown. Doug was well known for his love of hunting pheasants with his field golden retrievers. He really loved elk hunting, especially with his kids and friends. After moving to Lewistown in the 80s, Doug bought and operated his office supply store for many years. Doug was also appointed to serve in the Montana House of Representatives from House District 29. He was selected to the House seat after the current representative was appointed to the Senate in the fall of 2021. Doug was sworn in on December 14th, 2021. He ran for re-election and won the general election in November of 2022, but he had to resign on January 10th, 2023 due to health issues. Doug is survived by his wife, Jill, of 42 years, their children, Paul, Caitlin Kelso, and grandson, Hayden Kelso.
John Jack Ward. Pretty cool that this is going to be read on Palm Sunday. Jack was born in Helena, Montana on June 4th of 1945 to Catherine and Charles Ward, raised by his mom and grew up in and around Helena. He attended Cathedral High School, and after high school, Jack attended college at the University of Idaho. Then Jack went to Gonzaga University. There he graduated with a bachelor's degree in business in 1968. Jack met his future bride, Kathy Duffy, while attending Gonzaga. He and Kathy were married on June 8 of 1968 in Hillsborough, California. Kathy was the love of his life, and Jack would tell you till this dying day, his dying day, he got the better half. Jack joined the Navy in 1967, attended Officers Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida. After being commissioned, he completed flight training in Corpus Christi, Texas, earning the Wings of Gold as a Navy flight officer. His first active duty assignment was in Rota, Spain. Serving as in Rota, Jack was assigned to aviation instructor duty on a VT-29 and an in NSA Corpus Christi, Texas. There, he and Kathy welcomed their third child, Kenny. Jack later served in the hangar deck officer aboard USS Ortosky, a CV-34, based out of Alameda, California, and on his return to Montana, settled the family on 40 acres in the Helena Valley, where he lived the rest of his life. There, Jack and Kathy welcomed their fourth child, Molly. And in 1981, Jack continued his military service in the Navy Reserves for more than 15 years, commuting monthly to Navy headquarters in Willoughby Island, Washington, where he served as a flight engineer and operations officer on a C-40 aircraft with a VR-61. In his final assignment in uniform, retiring as commander in 1995, and in 1993, Jack and Kathy purchased Little John's Septic Service. They ran that business for 37 years with the help of several family members and many trusted employees. By the time Jack and Kathy sold Little John's in 2020, he was one of the most respected businesses in town. In addition to Jack's business exploits and Navy service, he also served as a state representative from 2005 and 2008 in the Montana legislature, where he helped pass the public smoking ban and worked across the aisle to end the budget stalemate. That's a long story. Following his time in office, Jack was appointed by the governor to the parole board. He took his commitments to the state and his country very seriously, and serving with honesty, integrity, and passion. Jack was preceded in death by his parents and his brother, James Ward. Jack is survived by his wife, Kathy, of 55 years, and their 4 children and spouses, 11 grandchildren, Sister Patricia Dale Thurnholt, and sister-in-law Jane Williams, along with countless nieces, nephews, cousins, and many friends here in the valley. A personal note, Jack came out to the ranch and wanted to learn how to ride horses. He was never done learning all of his life. And there's one story where he was riding his horse at the farm, and he was laying on the ground. And his wife drove out and saying Jack is being the horse whisperer laying amongst his horses. When she returned, he was still laying on the ground, having realized the exact same thing that happens to many people in the horseback world. Sometimes we fall off or get bucked off. He recovered and got back on the horse. I think that says it all. Thank you.
On February 25th, 2025, Kathleen Kathy Swanson passed away peacefully at the age of 77. Her soulmate and husband, Raymond Butch Swanson, was waiting to greet her and usher her into their next life together. Kathy was born on August 23rd, 1947, at the Anaconda Hospital to Patrick John Keenan and Ann Venisco Keenan. Her life was deeply influenced by history and a tight-knit community of Anaconda. She grew up under the shadow of the towering smokestack in Goosetown and graduated from Anaconda Central High School. Later, she and Butch moved to their home where the picture window offered a view of both the C Hill and the A Hill, a place where they built their life together and raised their children. Kathy found joy in watching the young children walk to and from the elementary school, especially during the Halloween parade. Kathy dedicated herself to raising 4 strong, brilliant, humorous, and boisterous children, while Butch taught public elementary school. Always community-oriented, she spent weekends and holidays cooking for the county jail when her children were young. As her kids grew more independent, Kathy joined the team at Southwest Montana Community Federal Credit Union, where she worked as a teller for over 20 years. The credit union staff and its members became like family to her. Kathy took great pride in representing Anaconda, Phillipsburg, and the Drummond area when she ran for and won a seat in the Montana legislature. One of her proudest accomplishments was carrying the bill that increased the wages of state workers. She knew this salary boost would have a significant impact on the hardworking union workers in Warm Springs and at the state prison. Kathy served her community as a House representative from 2011 to 2019. Kathy was preceded in death by her husband Butch, her parents and her husband's parents, her sister-in-law Marianne Rouse, and infant grandchildren Keenan Patrick and Brian Swanson. Kathy is survived by her children, Dana Swanson and Denise Juneau, Hod Swanson, Eric and Maggie Swanson, Kate and Chase Benson. Her 5 grandchildren who brought endless joy to her life, Daly, who happens to be my favorite human, Bridger, Cedric, Zale, and Cashel, and her beloved siblings, Colleen Keenan DRC, Joe DRC, Marianne Keenan McKay and Dawn McKay, Nancy Keenan, Tom Keenan, and Lori Wing. She is survived by her sister-in-law, Pam Swanson, and many nieces and nephews who brought her great happiness. I consider it a true honor to have served in her former seat. Kathy was always supportive of me and provided many words of encouragement and advice. Often the most memorable of our conversations took place on benches at our local baseball fields or gyms as we cheered on her grandkids and teammates, including my own children. However, the thing that Kathy shared with me that I'm most grateful for is her family, whom are here today and counted among my friends. Eric and Maggie, Dana and Denise, thank you for your friendship, and thank you for allowing me to speak about kids today.
Joseph William Barnett passed away in his home on Sunday, January 5th, 2025, surrounded by his loving family. Joe was born on August 4th, 1929, in the Horseshoe Hills Basin outside of Manhattan, Montana. Joe graduated from Manhattan High School, being inducted into the Hall of Fame for sports. Joe was also on Gallatin Valley's first American Legion baseball team, which played in Manhattan. Joe attended Montana State College, which is now MSU, where he met the love of his life, Janelle. They enjoyed 72 years of marriage, mostly in Bozeman-Belgrade area. While at MSU, Joe played basketball and football and was inducted into the Hall of Fame at MSU in 1994. Joe always said his favorite team was the Bobcats, and whoever played the Grizzlies. Upon graduation, Joe served in the United States Air Force as a second lieutenant. Joe continued to serve his country in the Air Force Reserves and was discharged as a captain. Returning to Gallatin County, Joe was hired by Bozeman Senior High School to teach American history and coach football, basketball, and track. He influenced many students at that high school, including me, his sons, Ron and Doug, and his daughter, Sherry, who is my classmate. Joe's faith in Christ impacted all the people he encountered. Joe and Janelle purchased a bee business in Belgrade, Montana, which they named Barnett Apiaries. In 1984, Joe retired from teaching to become a full-time beekeeper. And in 1990, he was elected to be the state representative for his district, serving the Montana House of Representatives until 2000. So we were hoping to have Representative Cindy Yonkin be here to present, and she's unable to be here. She's way out of state, coming home. But I got in touch with her, and she gave me a few words with what I'd like to share with you, because she did serve with Joe. I simply was influenced with him, like I said, in high school, and then also as our clerk and recorder. I would interact him. When he was a legislator, I was the clerk and recorder for our county. But this is what Cindy Yonkin had to say. I had the distinct honor of serving with a man who would truly qualify as a statesman and a gentleman. Joe was perhaps the most thoughtful legislator I served with in the 1999 session. It was the end of the first term of term limits, which had been passed in the early 90s. So we freshmen were lucky to have a few of the more experienced legislators on both sides of the aisle to shepherd us newbies along. Joe did not frequently raise his microphone to speak, but when he did, you knew he had something very worthy of your attention. Joe was always thoughtful in his deliberations on every kind of bill which came before the House. His experience in life, and at that point his fifth and final session, gave him additional years in which he gained the respect of everybody in the Capitol building again on both sides of the aisle. He had the sincere and deep respect of all his constituency in the Belgrade and Manhattan areas, including my parents. That would be Cindy's parents. I doubt you would ever have been able to find anyone then or now say a cross word about Joe. He served his constituency and Montana with dignity and integrity, which is all too rare these days. God rest his soul.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen. Joan Valerie Anderson passed away peacefully in her sleep on the evening of July 29th, 2023. Joan was born on January 22nd, 1937, in the house her grandfather built in Fromberg, Montana. She grew up on a ranch and attended school in Fromberg. She graduated from Eastern Montana College with a degree in elementary education and taught in Casper, Wyoming, and Billings for several years. Joan married Marty Anderson on June 17, 1961, and went on to follow him as he worked as a ranger for the National Park Service, living in Yellowstone National Park. While he worked, she was a seasonal worker. Later, they worked at Death Valley, Grand Junction, Petrified Forest, Grand Canyon, San Diego, and finally 29 Palms, California. Along the way, they added a son, Victor. I'm sure he's a very good-looking guy, and Susan, a very beautiful young lady, to their family in 1986. Marty retired, and they returned to Fromberg, where she returned to the job she loved the best, teaching. Joan enjoyed taking part in many community groups, including the Fromberg United Methodist Church, Order of the Eastern Star, Cornelius Hedges Chapter, Republican Central Committee, and the Clark Fork Valley Museum. She was elected in 1998 to serve in the Montana House of Representatives, representing Carbon County. Joan worked hard for the people of her district and in the term until 2006. She was proud of many places she served, and she said her favorite job ever, yes, was working as a director of a preschool in 29 Palms and teaching with small children. Joan and Marty moved to Stevensville, Montana in 2017 to live with their daughter Susan and her family. After Marty passed away in 2018, she became active in the local community, playing bridge with different groups, pursuing the love of politics in Ravalli County, Republican women, and various other activities. In closing, Joan is survived by her son Victor, his wife Janelle Anderson of Arvado, Colorado, and her daughter Susan, married to Randall Peterson of Stevensville, Montana, along with her grandchildren. God rest her soul. Thank you.
Kenneth Ken Mark Hansen, 71, passed away on June 10th, 2023, of natural causes. He was born October 15th, 1951, in Havre, Montana, to Kenny and Elsie Hansen of Harlem, Montana, and was the oldest of 3 children. Kim attended school in Harlem and graduated from Harlem High School in 1971. On June 23, 1973, he married the love of his life, Ann Burkhartsmeyer, and lived on the farm south of Harlem before moving to town. Together they had 2 children, Jessica and Julie. They were married for several wonderful years before Ann sadly passed away. Later in life, Kim married Renee. She brought 4 children into the family, John, Brad, Larry, and Lori. He spent his life farming and ranching with his brothers Kurt and Craig. Kim was very proud to continue the stewardship of the land that his grandfather Newt and father Kenny had begun. Kim was a dedicated member of the community. From the ambulance crew and fire department to numerous boards and committees, Kim volunteered and served with diligence and pride. As a public servant, Kim spent 8 years on the Harlem City Council and 2 years as Harlem's mayor. Kim was elected in 2003 to the Montana State Senate, where he served for 8 years. As senator, he always kept his constituents and community in mind. In the session of 2005 and 2007, he served as the chair of the Senate Agriculture, Livestock, and Irrigation Committee. He was proud of his time in Helena and enjoyed the relationships made both in and out of the Senate chambers. A moment of pride for Kim was when he was asked to introduce the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton, during a rally at MSU Northern in Havre. God bless Kim Hansen.
Mark Edward Nonig. It is with deep and sincere sorrow that the members of the 69th Legislative Assembly of the state of Montana record the passing of Mark Nonig on August 2nd, 2023. It is fitting and proper that the record and accomplishments of the late Mark Nonig be filed on the official records of the Assembly, and the following facts relative to his career are hereby noted. Mark was born on November 19, 1947, in Minneapolis, to Herb and Edna Nonig. He graduated from Billings Senior High in 1966, where he was president of his class. He received a BS in Aerospace Mechanical Engineering from Montana State University in 1970. Upon graduation, he worked with Chevron Oil Company in San Francisco before deciding to go to law school. He received his JD from University of Montana in 1978. Soon after, he began his law career at Hendrickson and Bishop, where he practiced up until the time of his death. He dearly loved the law, his partners, and his clients. Pain in Mark's back plagued him for many years, starting in junior high. In 1996, he was finally diagnosed with Sherman's disease and underwent a 13-hour surgery to his spine. After 6 months of intensive recovery, he was finally able to golf, which he loved. Unfortunately, over time, his back and nerve pain worsened, and he endured 5 more surgeries. He was the bravest of men. Mark met Sharon Grubbs in 1984, and they worked side by side at Hendrickson for 32 years. What began as a fun friendship blossomed into a 38-year relationship. They skied, golfed, traveled, entertained, and built 2 homes together. The real loves of Mark's life were his grandchildren, who filled him with pride and gave him the special name Bumpa. Sharon and Mark surprised everyone by finally marrying on December 31st, 2012. Mark was a quiet man who loved finding solutions to problems and talking politics with his friends. He jumped into politics himself in 1998 when he ran for the legislature. He served in the Montana House of Representatives, meeting lifelong friends and deepening his understanding of state government. After leaving the legislature in 2006, Mark continued to serve his community and state as the president of the Montana Board of Investments, board president of the Family Tree, and steering committee member for the Yellowstone County Family Drug Court. Mark was good, kind, and honest, living his life by the golden rule. He is preceded in death by his parents and his brother Jim. He is survived by his wife Sharon Grubbs, stepchildren Jason Grubbs, Perrin, Tennis Enders and Whitney Grubbs, Chris Moss, his sister Linda Geiger, brother Dan, brother Russ, Evelyn, and sister-in-law Corinna Nonig, and his beloved grandchildren Henry Enders, Zora Enders, Max Moss, Ava Grubbs, Zoe Grubbs, and Hazel Moss. It was an honor to serve with my friend.
Thank you. It's an honor to bring these words, this obituary, to an elder, a tribal elder of mine, Floyd Bob Jarvis. Floyd Bob Jarvis was born on July 9th, 1931, at a family hang encampment on the shores of the Dearborn River. His parents were Isabel Teresa Vial and George Gardapi. His mother remarried and married Joseph Joe Jarvis, and Bob carried his name throughout his life. Bob was a bright young man. He skipped 2 grades because he was so advanced in school. But he had to drop out because he had no place to stay. At a young age, he went to school for the Great Northern Railroad until he decided to join the military. He became a combat vet after having served his time during the Korean War. He received a commendation plaque from the South Korean President Kim Do-jung on the 50th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War, thanking him for his courage, spirit of sacrifice, and selflessness, which he fought to help enable the now free democratic nation. Bob was quite the athlete. He participated in baseball, football, bronc riding, track and field, and boxing. During his military service, he won the Far East Boxing Championship in Japan. Bob worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs in various capacities, such as the water master for the irrigation canal, the supervisor for the roads until his on-the-job training. And he would always tell the story of the flood of 1964, which probably none of you probably remember, but it affected a lot of the people in my neck of the woods. And he would tell the stories. That was 60 years ago. And he never forgot, and he always came forward with his stories of helping help the survivors and also look for the missing. And I appreciated that because I was a child then, but I'm a survivor of the flood of 1964. He served as a Democrat representative in the Montana State House for 6 years from 1989 to 1994. Bob served 8 years as a councilman for the Blackfeet Nation and a Browning Public School Board member for several years, as well as sitting on several other tribal committees. He had 5 children with his first wife, Norma Dumont. They are Floyd Smokey Jarvis, Rodney Jarvis, Russell Jarvis, James Dean Jarvis, Memory Rose, and Faith Ann Jarvis. He divorced Norma and he married Laura Smallface from the Kainai Reservation located in Canada, which is one of our sister tribes. They were blessed with 3 more children, Thomas, June Marie, and Cynthia, who was stillborn. Laura and Bob were married for 60 years at the time of his passing. Bob was 92 when he passed in Browning on July 18th, 2023. He was greatly missed by his family, colleagues, and friends. I just have to say that Bob always had a joke, and they were clean, but he always had a joke, and we could be sitting in some kind of really feast or a meal, could be Head Start, and he would be telling these jokes. He always had one. But I just have to say, one of the things that I'll always remember about Bob is he'd be sitting there and he'd have this food in front of him, but he would eat the dessert first. He says, you eat the dessert first because you never know when you'll get another one. So that was his life, and he lived that. Eat the dessert first.
Good afternoon. Harrison Fagg lived his life to the fullest and leaves a legacy that will not be forgotten. Harrison was many things: loving husband, dad, grandfather, friend, architect, designing and building some of the tallest buildings in the state, business owner, mountain climber, state high school football champion at Billings Senior, pilot, Air Force veteran, backpacker, kayaker, kayaking the Smith River at age 87, Montana Environmental Hall of Fame recipient, civic leader, earning dozens of awards and accolades, and world traveler. Harrison was a legislator for 16 years in the Montana State House, where he served his state from 1969 to 1984. There he authored many significant bills, including the Montana Hard Rock Mining Reclamation Act, and served as House Majority Leader in 1981. Harrison was born on October 27, 1931, and died peacefully surrounded by family March 29, 2025. Those 93 and a half years were packed with love, loss, adventure, hard work, setbacks, exhilarating moments, excruciating pain, and a life worth living. His greatest accomplishment was only by the grace of God when he accepted Jesus as his Savior in 1960. Even after this monumentous event, he still messed up regularly, and he knew it. But he kept trying to do better, loving more, trusting deeply, and striving to achieve the true meaning of life, to love God with all his heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love his neighbor as himself. He often admitted failure at this, but continued his journey. Harrison was married to his first love, Darlene Fagg, for 60 years. Darlene was Harrison's partner in all things, and he credits her for any success he had. Darlene died in 2012, and Harrison married Susan Gregory Fagg in 2014. Susan was a companion, confidant, and caregiver, enriching his life. Harrison's children, Cheryl, Mike, Russ, Karen, and Grant, Claudia, are grateful for Susan being in Harrison's life and loving him to the end. Harrison was blessed to have 6 grandchildren: Eugene, Lauren Burke, Michael, David, Michaela, David, Stevens, Harrison Fagg, Barkley, Brendan Sedgwick, Lillian Fagg, Delaney Fagg, and 4 great-grandchildren. Harrison was a good friend of mine for 30 years. To say that Harrison lived his life to the fullest is a complete understatement. He always went 100 miles an hour and did everything he did to the fullest extent. And I think that led to his many speeding tickets, one of which I was with him when he got. Harrison and my son Connor were great friends. Harrison climbed all 27 peaks over 12,000 feet in the Beartooth Range. Harrison and I and Connor, my son, climbed at least 4 of them. Mount Wood, which is the second highest peak, Mount Whitetail Peak, which is, I think, the 4th highest. We climbed Bowback Mountain, Elk Mountain, and Rearguard all together. And that was when Harrison was in his mid-70s, and he was a hard guy to keep up with. Harrison was one of the toughest guys I knew. I just want to recount one story about him and my son Connor. We were coming down from one of those peaks, and I don't know if you've ever boot skied down a glacier, but Harrison hated boot skiing down glaciers, and he said, "Tom, I don't want to boot ski down there." I said, "Well, Harrison, just go around it." And so Connor and I started going down, and Harrison, for some reason, decided to go too. So we're about 25, Connor and I were at the bottom. Harrison was 25 yards from the bottom, and he went down in the snow and fell on his back and slid on his back right down into a boulder field at the bottom. And I thought, oh no, he's dead. And he gets up, he's bleeding on his head, shakes it off and says, "I'm all right." And I said, "Are you sure you're all right?" And so we go back to camp. He says, "Tom, when you take a look at my arm, I think I cut it." So I looked at his tricep, and there's about a gash about 8-10 inches long there. You could see right down into the bone. I said, "Harrison, we got to get out of here. We got to go down and get you to a doctor." He said, "No, just put a couple Band-Aids on it. I'll be okay." So we did that, spent the night. We went out. Next day, he had 16 stitches in his arm. Harrison lived like that. He was a man of action, always living his life to the full. But you know, Harrison was 93 and a half years old when he died. And he died, had a stroke, and he died, but he was living his full life. You know, the psalmist said that life is a mist, a handbreadth, a shifting shadow. But Harrison's life, even though 93 years old, was short. But I'm confident that those of us who will believe will see him and will spend eternity with him. So God bless Harrison Fagg and his family.
Thank you to all those senators and representatives for those great eulogies. And right now I'd like to invite up Senator Logie to sing "Great is Thy Faithfulness," and feel free to join. There are words in the back of your program.
Yeah, please join. Great is my faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Thank you, Senator Logie. Now I'd like to invite Pastor Steve Bostrom to close us in prayer.
Please join me in prayer. Maker of heaven and earth and us, keeper of all time, architect, and builder of the city with eternal foundations. This is the season of resurrection. Jesus, we marvel at your resurrection. You overcame death, so Paul trumpets, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? Pardoning Prince of Peace, persistent prayer-hearing provider, patient protector. This is also the season of remembrance. Lord, we are dust, and we will return to dust. We do not have power to turn back the clock to a time when people who are now gone were full of life. But today, remembering, we remember, and we especially honor those who served us well in our great state of Montana. Merciful and mighty God, we entrust them and their eternal destiny to you. Keep us from false gildings of nostalgia and from forgetfulness. Help us truly remember these unique beings you made in your image. Now, everlasting Father, through Peter, you call us to purify our souls by aligning ourselves with you, sincerely and earnestly loving one another with brotherly love from a pure heart. In this season, Peter tells us that you, Lord, are planting not perishable seeds, but imperishable seeds. And then Peter doubles down by quoting Isaiah, all flesh is like grass, and all its glory like the flower of grass. The grass withers, the flower falls, but the word of the Lord remains forever. Incarnate Word, may your word be our final word, the ultimate good news to us here today. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you all for joining us on this 2025 memorial service, and that concludes. The legislative spouses do have tea in the old Supreme Court Chamber 303, so please join us over there. Thank you.